In this video, I'm going to examine and critique Dr. Stephen Greer's position that there are no hostile extraterrestrials visiting our planet. Consequently, we needn't worry about that potentiality. I will do my very best to steel man Dr. Stephen Greer's position. Steel manning is the opposite of straw manning. It just means that I'm going to try to present his argument in the most persuasive way that I can. Dr. Stephen Greer has mentioned before that there are things that can occur that we would interpret as negative when in actuality they are not. And when he said this, I think he was referencing legitimate abductions such as what happened to Travis Walton, or just mysterious and frightening contact scenarios. He's not referencing my labs in this case. Dr. Greer uses an analogy to demonstrate how there could be circumstances where the extraterrestrials do something to a person that the person could deem negative when in actuality is beneficial. He references circumstances where he has to engage in surgery on a child because it's an emergency situation and there's not enough time to administer anesthesia, and so he has to do it without any anesthesia, and the child probably thinks that Mr. Greer is a monster when in actuality he's attempting to save the child's life. The problem I have with this argument is that it assumes that the extraterrestrials have an objective moral standard that reflects what we would deem as a moral higher order, but that's not necessarily the case. Let's face it, the extraterrestrials' bias may not indeed reflect the best interests of humanity. Moreover, just because these civilizations may not ruin their biosphere as we are ruining our biosphere, just because they may not be engaging in war and strife as we are engaging in war and strife, and just because they may have solved all the problems that yet we have not solved, does not necessarily equate to them having a higher order of moral objectivity. Perhaps they are a much more peaceful, a much more evolved civilization than we are, yet their assessment of right or wrong when applied to humanity would not be something that we as a species would agree is a good thing. When Dr. Stephen Greer was being interviewed by Project Camelot, I noticed that multiple times he accused Carrie Cassidy of partaking in anthropocentric projection, yet the reality is I noticed Dr. Stephen Greer himself engage in anthropocentric projection multiple times himself. Dr. Greer makes the argument that if the extraterrestrial races wanted to take over planet Earth, they would not have waited any duration of time for humans to progress technologically, to build up nuclear proliferation, and to get better at general warfare, because that would make it more difficult for the extraterrestrial races to take over our planet. For starters, that is a very logical assessment, but nevertheless, that assessment is coming from a human mind, so by definition, that is anthropocentric projection. Another factor to keep in mind is that the extraterrestrials may be so vastly ahead of us technologically that whatever gains we as a society would attain might be minuscule. And in other words, it could take literally hundreds, if not thousands, and perhaps tens of thousands of years or hundreds of thousands of years for us to progress to the point where we would actually challenge the extraterrestrials within warfare. So the fact that they allowed us to attain a little bit more technology over the past 70 years or so is really not that convincing at all. One reason the extraterrestrial races may be postponing to take over our world may be for the simple fact that they are studying us from a scientific standpoint. And when their curiosity has been fulfilled, then they'll be like, okay, we had enough, we learned enough, now let's kill all of humanity and take over Earth. Now, I'm not suggesting by any stretch of the imagination that that is even remotely likely. All I'm doing is giving a possible perspective from an alien race that may seem a bit strange from our human sensibilities, but one thing we have to constantly remind ourselves is that the way the minds of an alien race may manifest may be vastly different from our own earthly sensibilities. Just a quick addendum, because I just watched some of the interview again. I want to give perhaps more accurate context. Dr. Stephen Greer said in the interview that if the aliens races were hostile and planned on invading, that the aliens would have shut our civilization down in 1945 and wouldn't have waited for our technology to progress. But I should point out that he believes that we developed a long time ago the ability to actually shoot UFOs down. So my comment about nuclear proliferation wasn't exactly fair. However, I'm not personally convinced we're capable of shooting UFOs down. I would have to look at the evidence for that. Let's continue. Another anthropocentric projection that Dr. Stephen Greer partook in during the Camelot interview is that he said, I believe he said this multiple times, he said, well, you know, we have these expeditions, these CIE-5 expeditions where we go out under the stars and we welcome these civilizations to make contact with them. And out of all the times we've done that, we have never encountered any hostility. And so that proves that the ETs are not hostile. And of course, that is textbook anthropocentric projection. It could be that the extraterrestrials do not want to be, for their own reasons, overtly hostile. Their hostility may be relegated only to the covert kind because maybe there is something that they want to accomplish that would not be available to them if they were hostile on an overt level. Another issue that I had during the interview is that he presented his evidence as to why humanity is under a quarantine. In other words, we cannot go very far out into space because the aliens won't let us. He said that when Edgar Mitchell was on the moon, Edgar Mitchell recounts from Timothy Good's book Above Top Secret that Edgar Mitchell and his fellow astronauts were warned off the moon by the extraterrestrials. Of course, I think it is a big leap of logic to say that because they were warned off the moon, that means the extraterrestrials also are not going to tolerate humanity exploring other places like Mars or Jupiter or other sectors of the universe. It could very well be that the extraterrestrials simply don't want humanity to ever step foot on the moon, but are not concerned with other areas of exploration in the universe. Finally, I think there is a distinct possibility that Dr. Stephen Greer doesn't pay heed to. And that is that there could be civilizations out there that have not yet come to Earth, but are indeed hostile, and they might be on track to come here 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 100 years from now, and that when they do get here, they will be hostile toward humanity. That is a distinct possibility that cannot be dismissed. Ultimately, I feel like Dr. Stephen Greer's convictions are based on limited evidence and limited knowledge. I personally feel like his conviction about there is no hostile manifestation of extraterrestrials and we really don't need to concern ourselves too much with that. I feel like that ironclad conviction that he seems to always portray is based primarily on faith and not knowledge. The difference between faith and knowledge is something that we know. Faith is something that we believe. And when it comes to something that involves these kind of stakes, I don't believe faith is the appropriate approach to have when it comes to questions of could the extraterrestrials have a hostile manifestation toward humankind. It should be noted that I am not saying that Dr. Stephen Greer is wrong. It's certainly within the realm of possibility that all extraterrestrial civilizations in the universe that can traverse interstellar space are peaceful and would not engage in any negative impact upon humanity. I'm saying I don't know, nobody knows, and no one should hold up that position as if it is knowledge when it is indeed faith. Peter Levenda makes a fascinating point on the Forum Borealis YouTube show. He says that just by being in close proximity to this phenomenon, whatever it may be, could cause either catastrophic damage or subtle damage to humanity. He underscores that the damage caused from this phenomenon does not need to be the result of something done intentional, but that this phenomenon is so powerful, so sophisticated, that it could make mistakes, it could be careless or whatnot that could lead to problems for mankind. There's actually a historical precedence for this kind of thing occurring. There have been thousands and thousands of sightings by pilots where aviation safety has been compromised. Here is an excerpt from Leslie Kane's book on UFOs that underscores this worldwide reality. He wrote that a crew's ability to perform its duties safely is disrupted when crew members are faced with extremely bizarre, unexpected, and prolonged luminous and/or solid phenomena cavorting near their aircraft. The danger posed by the phenomenon in flight lies more with the human response to it than from the actions of the UAP itself, because the objects do not appear to be aggressive or hostile and seem to be able to avoid collisions by executing last-minute high-speed turns in a flash. To be perfectly frank, I don't know what these UFOs are trying to accomplish with all these near misses that they engage in. However, even if they are attempting not to hurt anybody or not to cause a crash, they are still creating a hazard for pilots. There was actually a shocking incident that happened in Australia in 1978 where a young pilot named Frederick Valentiche went on the radio and was conveying that there was a weird object doing weird maneuvers. Make a longer story short, the plane ultimately crashed or was no longer heard from, at least, and it appears that the UFO interfered so extensively with the plane that it led to its destruction, or some people speculate that he was abducted and never came back to Earth. How about the Travis Walton case? Travis believes, to my best recollection, or at least this is one of the things he believes is possible, is that he got close into such close proximity with the UFO that his close proximity triggered some sort of mechanism on the craft, and it shot out some sort of laser beam toward Travis Walton, and that injured him, and then the occupants took him onto a ship to heal him of that mishap. Mr. Walton believes that the occupants of the UFO were not able to prevent that occurring because they did not anticipate that someone would get out of the car and get that close to their UFO. But again, this just perfectly underscores how this very advanced anomalous phenomena can do things to people that it doesn't intend to do. When you have such a powerful phenomena capable of so much, it goes without saying that unintended consequences can occur. Another incident that occurred such as this is during the Rendlesham Forest incident, when the military officers got very close to the triangular craft and suffered from radiation poisoning. There was an incident in Colores, Brazil in 1977 where crafts of some sort were shooting lasers at people and they were getting injured, and I think in some cases killed from those crafts. For all we know, those crafts were probes, and the extraterrestrial intelligence didn't intend for them to shoot those lasers at the populace, but something went wrong. Alternatively, it was intentional. Regardless, this goes to underscore that there is a distinct possibility, and in some cases, proof that perhaps that things have occurred that were unintentional or perhaps unintentional by the extraterrestrial intelligences, and that is a clear and present risk for humanity. Just to give you a glimpse of the technological capabilities and control potentialities that the ETs have over humanity, One thing that the former head of the UFO program in the Pentagon, Luis Elizondo, has confirmed is that he conveyed that through his studies there for the past nearly 10 years, he learned that one thing that they are able to do, assuming they're extraterrestrial, which is what I do assume, is they're able to turn off and affect electronic systems on planes and on other perhaps military hardware, electronic systems. In addition, Mr. Elizondo said that these UFOs somehow have the capability of having an impact upon a person's ability to assess how much time has transpired. When you get into the realm of a civilization that is so ridiculously advanced that they can alter your perception of time, yeah, that probably suggests that at the very least, you should show a respectable amount of caution that these entities that are flying these UFOs and that have civilizations much older than ours, that they could engage in some kind of manipulation, and it's probably good to be aware of at least that possibility, as in contrast to assuming that they are all filled with benevolence. And I hope that they are all filled with benevolence, but I would never claim that I have knowledge of that, because to say they're all benevolent is a matter of faith and not a matter of knowledge. The last thing I want to share with you is that I've just added a new shirt to my t-shirt shop. And let me tell you something. If anyone sees you wearing this, they're going to do one of two things if they are interested in the UFO subject. They're either going to stare at you or they're going to approach you and start a conversation with you. Because I can't think of a shirt that is a greater conversation starter than this one. If you're interested, the link is below, or you can go to disclosurelife.com. Thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.